the penalties are stern. That's the topic of today's interview segment, a timely topic at that, because one of golf's greatest stars is out of the PGA Championship on a technicality. CNN's Bob Kurtz explains.
There's no question that the biggest story here of the 63rd PGA Championships was the disqualification of Lee Trevino. Now, there was a strange set of circumstances that happened that led up to the disqualification. Trevino was playing in the same group, the same threesome as Lanny Watkins and Tom Weiskopf. They were in the scoring tent going over the cards as the golfers always do, checking it hole by hole. Trevino was done with his card when Weiskopf turned to him and said, "Hey, you put down the wrong score here on the 9th hole. I had a 3. And Trevino had put down a 4 for him, and he says, "Oh, you made that putt?" They started talking about it. And as a consequence, Trevino forgot to sign his card, and somehow Tom Weiskopf signed Trevino's card. A strange set of circumstances, to be sure. The PGA officials, when they found out about it, felt they could do nothing. They conferred, they talked about it, but they went to the rules, and rule number 38 led to the disqualification of Trevino. You must sign your card, and the officials felt they had no other choice.
To disqualify a player like Lee Trevino, who means so much to the championship and to golf, is difficult. If you and I were promoting an event, why, we'd look every which way rather than losing. But in this particular event, we can't. We can't do it. That's the rule, and that's called, and he understands it and is in agreement with it.
You got to remember, when you play golf, there's only 2 things that you have to do. One is you have to make sure that you're honest with what scores you make on each hole. Put that particular number in that block for 18 holes. When you finish, you total it and you sign your name to it. And I didn't do that. I totaled it and it was correct, but I didn't sign it. And that's the rules.
That was on Thursday. They disqualified Lee Trevino. The thousands of people here at the PGA Championship, of course, very upset, not able to see one of their favorites. But we have him here for you now, our guest, Lee Trevino, gallery favorite, known for a lot of things, for being happy-go-lucky on the course, known for one of the strangest swings in all of golf.
It is an unusual swing. If you look up and down the driving range, which is behind the cameraman there, you will see different sized players, but basically all swing about alike. Now, this tour has been on for years and years, and I'm the only one that's ever swung the club the way that I swing it. I fell into this thing accidentally because I used to draw the ball and hit it from right to left very bad. And I've always had a saying, and as you can talk to a fade, but a hook won't listen, you see. And so there's no sense in hooking the ball because it's very inconsistent to hook the ball. And the reason for it is simply because the hands tend to pronate. Mm-hmm. People tend to be taught to pronate going back and then pronate going forward. And what they seem to forget is that always, anytime you grip a golf club, you will see the face of the club and the back of the left hand point in the same direction. In other words, so what do you have here is you have 2 golf clubs. You have a face there and you have a face here. It's like what you call a lettering set, mm-hmm. A wooden lettering set, and you want to make the letters over on this side the same, and you put the needle here and you go up and down the letter set and it makes them here on a board. This basically works the same way. I hit a golf ball with this golf club.
Back of your left hand.
Sure, yeah. Because what happens is wherever this left hand goes, that's what influences that. If this left hand turns here, the club face turns.
You don't hit anything except from an open stance. You don't close the stance to hook it.
You can't. If you close the stance, you see, if you go back to the beginning of the game, which was invented over 200 years ago in Scotland, and it's been in this country, in North America, about 100 years. And if you go back that far, and if you've ever read books that have been written by different professionals, actually the meat of the book, the inside of the book is basically the same, whether it was written in the teens, or the 20s, or the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. The only thing that's changed is the publisher's name and the pro that's on the cover. But when you open that book, they all teach exactly the same thing. They teach right foot back of the left. They teach taking the club back inside. They teach pronation. They teach releasing. They teach grip. This V going to the chin or the nose or the ear, and they got this one. Now you get people out at the driving range with a book, and they're going and they're looking at the book, and they're going here and they're going in, and it basically has nothing to do with it. You see, the most important thing about golf is the acceleration of the back of the left hand to the target, or parallel with a line with the target, because if this accelerates to the parallel line that you want to go to, then that club face has to go on that line. Now, the reason that I developed the open stance is simply because it taught me acceleration.
You know, the question comes in here. Most good players, historically, it used to come up from the caddy ranks, but then now most of them come from country clubs, from the college ranks and so forth, and they're taught by top professionals. They learn the swing, they've read books, they go to all the You didn't have that advantage. How old were you when you started, and how in the world did you make the progression when you started really learning how to hit a golf ball?
Well, I never really started playing golf until I was 19. I started caddying when I was about 9, and then I didn't play. And I went in the Marine Corps at the age of 17, and by the caddy experience that I had developed my game, what we call a sandlot game. There's a lot of sandlot football players that could probably play in the NFL. And I developed the game out there playing. After we'd go out and we'd caddy, we'd make 90 cents for 18 holes caddying, and then we got a dime tip, so we got $1. So we'd go out in the back of the caddy shed and start putting with bottles and gambling the money away, or shooting dice or whatever. And so I went in the Marine Corps, and I carried a light 30 machine gun. I was with the 3rd Marine Division, 9th Marines in Okinawa in 1957. And in 58, I was transferred to Okinawa. And I saw, in 1958, I saw a bulletin in the recreation room about tryout for the 3rd Marine Division golf team. So I tried out 36-hole play at Owasso Meadow, sand greens. I shot 68, 77, and I made number 5 man, and they were taking the top 6. So it all came back, and I started practicing. Well, I got out on November the 10th, which is the Marine Corps birthday of 1960, and I still didn't have any intentions of playing golf. I went to work at the Columbian Club in Dallas. It's a Jewish club, building a new 9. And I worked construction, making the greens and shoveling the gravel and mixing the loam and peat moss and what have you, planting the grass, cutting it, changing tee markers, cutting greens. And I had a man come up to me named Hardy Greenwood that owned a driving range in the par 3 course. He said, I used to watch you hit golf balls at my driving range. And he said to me, is this what you're going to do the rest of your life? He says, do you want to work on a golf course, or would you like to make your living playing on it? And I says, what do you mean? He says you've got potential to be.
How could he see that kind of talent in you, though? Because you weren't shooting those kind of numbers.
No, he watched my swing.
Yeah, but you didn't have the ability to score like you.
No, well,
like you did.
I never played a complete 18 holes of golf until I was 15, and I shot 77. I've only shot in the 80s 5 times in my entire life. So I developed this particular thing of hitting. So I went to work for this man in 1961, and I practiced 5 years, solid practice, 7 days a week, without ever playing in a golf tournament. And in 1965, I entered the Texas State Open in Sharpstown in Houston and won it. It was my first tournament ever. I beat Frank Warden.
First tournament, Jim?
Yeah, first pro tournament I'd ever played in. And I won it. I beat Frank Warden in the first hole playoff. And then I didn't play anymore. Oh, no, that year I went to Mexico City and finished second to Homero Blanca's, the Mexican Open.
How old were you now? At 25?
Yeah, 26.
26.
Yes.
That's an incredible late start. Then to think about the tour. We're going to come back in just a second, and we're going to tell about the couple of miracles in the U.S. Open when Lee Trevino suddenly became a national celebrity. You stay with us. We are back with Supermax Lee Trevino. A fascinating, incredible story of a guy who, we've heard the story, came out of nowhere hitting. Did you ever really hit a ball?
Dr. Pepper.
Wasn't
yeah. Well, you see, people seem to think because I worked for Dr. Pepper.
Right, and sing.
I used to sing and dance and everything, you know.
Wasn't bad.
And I had a friend of mine named Bobby Martin, which is a singer also, and she was married to my manager's brother. And, she had the big hit For the Love of Him, and she was a great singer. She always used to make fun of my singing when I did this Dr. Pepper commercial. And my recourse was, it was a gold album, I told her. I said, because that's what I got paid. I got paid about as much for that as she would have gotten for a gold album. Say,
why didn't they have you do I'm a Pepper, You're a Pepper?
That's right. But I did, it was a Dr. Pepper because it was round and smooth.
Was it a quart bottle?
Yeah, it was a 32 ouncer. It was a big one. But a Coke bottle, in other words, is concaved in the middle, and it wouldn't work. So I used to tape the bottle and put a glove on the right hand and play a par 3 with it, longest hole 120 yards. I used to take a half a stroke a hole from whoever wanted to play, which is the tie.
Right.
I played with it 5 years and never got beat. Never lost a match with it.
Well, that's got to be the greatest hustle in the world. What kind of?
No, that's not a hustle. See, everybody tends to interpret hustling a complete different way. Hustling is when you have a 10 handicap and you tell people that you're 15. Or you have a 2 handicap.
You told them what you were going to do, and you did it.
Well, it's a gimmick. There's a fool born every day, you know, and I used to get one out there every day. And you come up with a gimmick, and people want to see it. You know, whenever somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to bet you I can take this card and make it flip over there, why would you bet him? If he's going to bet you he can do that, hell, he can do it. But it's like I said, there's a fool born every day that wants to see it, and they don't mind paying $2 or $3. That's what I did.
Let's go from this kind of style and learning how to golf ball and winning your first tournament in Houston. Suddenly you entered the U.S. Open. You'd entered it once before.
Twice.
Before you played so well, before you finished sixth.
Yes.
You entered the year before.
Yes.
And
66,
and you weren't going to enter it in 67.
No. Too tough. I didn't think I was ready. I'd never witnessed rough like that.
Yeah. So you go to 67, and suddenly you finish, what, sixth?
Finished sixth, yeah.
And did it suddenly dawn on you, hey, I can play with these guys? I mean, it was like a revelation, or did you have any self-doubts before you went out there?
No, my intentions were still not to go on the tour. My intentions were to start the tour January of 68. Mm-hmm. But I got an invitation to play in the Western Open in Chicago and the American Golf Classic
because of that sixth place.
Fifth place I finished.
Fifth place finish.
Yeah. And I was invited to go to the Firestone tournament, and so my wife and I we decided to go to Minneapolis-St. Paul to warm up the tournament before. Mm-hmm. We were playing Hazeltine, and I'll never forget it. I had a 65 Plymouth station wagon, and we had a little potty trainer in the back. My daughter Leslie was about a year and a half old, and we had a little duck back there, and it just swing all the time, you know, and we took off, and we had to go across Kansas and Iowa, and I never seen so much corn in my life, you know. But we finally got there, and I qualified. It was the only time that I ever had to qualify for a golf tournament, for the exception of the U.S. Open. And I went there, teed it up on Monday. I was so nervous, I duck hooked it in a hedge right off the first tee, lost the ball, made 7. I shot 78 qualifying, and I was packing my car, and Jack Tuthill says, where are you going? I said, I've got an invitation in Chicago. I'm going down to practice there. He said, you qualified. I said, oh, no. I said, I shot 78. He said, 83 is going to make it.
At Hazeltine.
At Hazeltine. It make this course look like a pitch and putt. I mean, it's the longest guy. It's got 4 par 5s over 600 yards long. You know, Trent Jones built that course, and I don't think he likes golfers.
You know, Dave Hill's been a friend of mine for a number of years when I was out in Colorado.
He said a few things about it.
Yeah. Well, he said a few things about Hazeltine, right? They ruined a perfectly good cow pasture.
Yeah, a farm, yeah.
Yeah, I should play in corn here. But he was talking about playing with you. Now, this would be 68, right?
In the Open.
Yeah, and he said he didn't know who you were.
No, 67 he played with.
This was 67.
Yes.
He said I was playing with him, and he says he just, you know, he says after, you know, your swing, Dave really knows the golf swing and works on it and so forth.
That's right.
And so he can recognize a good swing, but yours was rather unique. He said it took him a few holes to adjust, and he says he came off and he says, this guy can play.
Well, I learned to play on a public golf course where everything was extremely hard, a lot of woods, Tennyson Park there in Dallas.
I played
it was tight.
Park.
I mean, you had to walk single file. If you played a foursome, you were like ducks. You were in a row. You know, it was very difficult to play that golf course. So I learned to hit a low trajectory ball and learn to play. I've had the pleasure of winning the British Open twice, and I said that if I would have been turned professional at the age of 21, if I would have taken the game up a little earlier and played in the British Open when I started in 21, I would have probably already won it 5 or 6 times because I could actually play better then than I really don't think that the people got to see the best. I thought that I could play in 64, 65, 66 much better than I can when in the 70s.
You know, when you had the accident, the hit by lightning, and so and you back problems and so forth, your game suffered. And you came back, and it was very interesting. A lot of people said you came back for pride. A lot of people came back for goals. But you said you ran into economic problems out in El Paso. You came back because you can't make this kind of money anywhere else.
No, I couldn't.
And the pressure was on again.
I love pressure. I love for people to say you can't do this. My caddy and I get out there all the time now, and I say it's a 6 iron. And he said, no, it's a 5. I said, I think it's a 6. He says, you can't get there. Well, hell, I'll take a 6 and just jump on it a little harder. I love the pressures. I think that's probably been the biggest killer of all has been success comes too easy. And it did with me. And I got to a point in 1974 to where that's when my game started deteriorating a little bit, and the reason is because it did come too easy. First tournament I played in, I won $6,000. I finished 13 tournaments, 67, I won $33,000. 1968, I won the Hawaiian Open and $132,000. Contracts were coming in, they were throwing money in suitcase. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then I built this golf course in El Paso, and it's no secret. I lost about $1.5 million in that particular project. And anytime you lose $1.5 million, I don't care if you're Rockefeller, it puts a crunch on you. And I had to come back and play hard. But that's what I like. And then I ruptured my back, and I had the disc removed. And again, they said that I was finished. And my doctor in Houston, Dr. Antonio Morey, that operated on me, he told me, he said, "You play better than ever." He said, "There'll be no problem. You take better care of yourself." Not until after he operated on me, I found out that he was a tennis player. Hell, he knew nothing about golf.
You played tennis better than ever.
Yeah, I told him, I told the doctor, I said, let me tell you something. I said, if I can't play anymore, I said, all that stuff that you operate with, you can use in the kitchen. I said, because your reputation's on the line here. But I like to be the underdog. I like to be up against the wall.
Did you ever have a moment when it came to you that hey, I don't like to say great, but realize that I am, like, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame of golf and so forth. And here's a guy that, you didn't make a game plan to start out when you're 6 years old. Hey, I'm going to be a great golfer like Jimmy Connors did in tennis, and like a lot of the golf pros out here. When did it suddenly dawn on you that you belong among the golfing greats?
Oh, you never do. You never do. I mean, you tend to get that title from people, from public, from media, from television, about you just happen to be one of the good players in that particular time. But you got to remember, if you stick a pin in me, I bleed. I hurt as much as everyone else. I get depressed. I like to drink. I do everything that other people like to do.
Were you hurt? I'm talking about psychologically, or did it hurt your feelings or anything when Sports Illustrated came out with this article about you recently, which said that went into kind of your financial difficulty, but also said that you're not the happy-go-lucky that people say you are, that you get off by yourself, that you're a loner in the evenings after the rounds and so forth.
Yeah, they're right. I told him all that. Why would I be hurt? I'd be hurting myself, wouldn't I?
Well,
no, I am. I'm a hermit when after I leave the golf course. I don't like to be around people when I leave the golf course. I feel like I give it my 1,000% when I'm out on the golf course. I make people laugh. It makes me happy. But when I leave here and I go home, I go into my room and I have all my meals in the room. I don't want to see anybody. I feel like I've done what I wanted to do. People have enjoyed it, and now it's my time. And I'm just like you or anyone that's watching here. They have times that they want privacy. How many times have these people who stand around and says, "Honey, let's go to some quiet place and have dinner"? Yeah, that's my room.
Because I see you.
That's the only place I can have dinner with and be quiet. If I go to a public restaurant, in other words, people knowing how I am, in other words, on the golf course, happy-go-lucky, they say, "Oh, hell, he won't mind. Let's go over and, hey, Lee, how you doing?" And you got, and then you say, "Oh," he says, "How you doing? God, I want you to meet my wife. Come on over here at the table." And and you're sitting, and I don't want to put up with that stuff. And then they say, "Well, wait a minute, hold it right there. There's my grandmother. I got a camera right here. Wait a minute," and the flash. I don't want to do that. I want to be what I just said a moment ago when you said about realizing the being great. Hey, I'm just a guy that golfers are not made. Golfers are born, and athletes are born. I can show you people up there that'll practice 5 times harder than I, had it 5 times easier, and their support can't pay attention. And the reason for it is because they just don't have the talent to play. Now, it just so happens that you fall into a category to where you're going to be a good player and make a lot at whatever you're doing. And it's somewhere along the line, that's me. And that's Nicklaus, and that's Watson, and Palmer, and Player, and all those guys. Now, I don't know anything about that, but privacy, I want it just like everybody else. When I go home, or when I go to a hotel and I walk to a hotel to register, hey, I don't want anybody running over at me and sticking books in my mouth and saying, "Sign this to my grandmother and this to my 2 kids, and come outside, I want to take a picture of you and your manager." And hey, I want to have some privacy.
And I guess of all those guys, you certainly rank as one of the all-time greats. We thank you very much for being with us. Lee Trevino, Supermax.
And you got to give Lee Trevino a lot of credit. I mean, here a guy gets kicked out of the biggest event left in the season, an opportunity to make a lot of money, he doesn't even complain.
He's a class guy, and he's one of the brightest sunbursts of a man that the golf tournament has seen, the golf tour has seen in a while. I mean, Arnie and Jack and Watson, I mean, they've got their admirers, but this guy is something else.
And,